Welcome back to the vault with me, G-Star. You are now safe, deep underground. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Story Time. You may or may not know, but recently, members of the team from the vault visited a location called the Jamaica Inn, which is notoriously one of the most haunted locations in the United Kingdom. It's on Bodmin Moor, and Bodmin Moor is a very mysterious, spooky and dark location which has many stories of ghosts and hauntings and the beast of Bodmin Moor and mysterious disappearances, just like today's story. But before we get into today's story, please don't forget to like and subscribe and click that notification bell. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy today's story time. This is the Charlotte Dymond story. It all began in 1842 when a domestic servant named Charlotte Dymond started a job at the Penhale farm that abutted Bodmin Moor. The farm was owned and operated by a 61-year-old widow, Mrs. Peter, and her son. In addition to Charlotte, there was a pair of other living farmhands that shared the work, John Stevens and Matthew Weeks, both in their early 20s. Weeks had worked on the farm for 7 years. The town was aware that Charlotte and Matthew Weeks had been dating even before she started to work at the farm. Matthew bore the scars of acne on his face and was quite an ordinary looking man with a limp and several missing teeth. However, he did like to impress with his attire. Weeks had a rival for Charlotte's affection. Thomas Prout was the nephew of the owner of the farm, and the 26-year-old often assisted with the work. Rumours suggested that Charlotte was promiscuous and tended to flirt at any opportunity. By all accounts, Weeks and Prout got on well together. The problem began when Prout took a fancy to Charlotte. The farm's other worker, John Stevens, reported that Prout wanted to rescue Charlotte from her current life of labour and possibly elope with her. On April the 14th, 1844, Charlotte finished her shift on the farm. As it was a Sunday, she put on her fine dress with a red shawl. Matthew wore a collared shirt and clean stockings. Charlotte was seen having a private conversation with Thomas Prout, and soon after, she set off with Matthew. Isaac Corrie, a 63-year-old man who tended to farm in the region, said that he saw Matthew accompanied by a young lady in a green striped dress. It was foggy that day, but the farmer clearly recognised Weeks on the basis of his limp. Everyone assumed that Charlotte was with him at this time, since they left together. When Weeks returned to the farm later that day, he was alone. Mrs. Peter quizzed him about Charlotte's whereabouts, but he pretended to be ignorant and said that he didn't know. Weeks' stockings were covered with mud up to the knee. John Stevens also noted that his shirt revealed new tears and a missing button. Over the course of several days, there was still no sign of Charlotte. Weeks insisted that he had been nowhere near the moor. Suspicions among the staff were growing, and in their eyes, Weeks was certainly guilty. Several days after Charlotte disappeared, Weeks said that Charlotte had taken a job offer in Bleasland, some miles away. 10 days after Charlotte vanished, concern was at fever pitch. The villagers organised a search party. Additionally, they investigated the offer of the new job and scoured the room of Matthew Weeks for any evidence. There was nothing indicating guilt in Weeks' room. However, the job offer that he had mentioned was found to be false. The search resulted in the discovery of a body. It was Charlotte, laying flat on her back at the banks of the River Allen. Her throat had been slashed that was 8.5 inches across, and the wound was so deep that a couple of her vertebrae had partially separated. Evidence indicated that someone had initially made one cut across her throat and then inserted the blade into the wound to take another slice to finish the job. Police issued a murder warrant for Matthew Weeks, but nobody was able to find him. An investigation into his whereabouts finally located him in Plymouth, at his sister's house. That was all the confirmation the authorities needed. It appeared that Matthew had murdered Charlotte and fled. Weeks was brought back to Bodmin Assizes, and there he was tried for murder. His testimony had changed several times, and the details he gave were unsubstantiated. Additionally, 2 more witnesses came forward, placing him with a woman of Charlotte's description. Boot prints near the crime scene also matched up to Matthew's boots. It took the jury only 35 minutes to return the verdict of guilty. The judge sentenced Matthew to death, and he was hung at Bodmin Jail on August 12, 1844, in front of roughly 20,000 people who came from all over the countryside. One detail that surfaced during the investigation was that Charlotte had plans to meet, but with Thomas Prout, at the Tremail Chapel later in the evening, sometime after she left the farm with Weeks. In fact, this was enough to cause many people to believe that Matthew Weeks was innocent and that he was unjustly hanged. It is for this reason, they say, that his angry ghost roams the area around the jail in search of justice. Just before Matthew was hanged, he dictated a letter, and this is what it read. "I hope young men will take a warning by me, and not put too much confidence in young women, the same as I did. I hope young females will take the same by young men. I loved that girl as dear as I loved my life, and after all the kind treatment I have shown her, and then she said she would have nothing more to do with me, and after this was done, then bitterly I did lament, thinking what would be my end. I thank the judge and the jury too, for they have given me no more than was my due." Many people believe this was a confession. Charlotte's tragic murder and Matthew's subsequent hanging caused a great commotion across the country. Shortly after the sensation quieted, the people of Bodmin erected a memorial to Charlotte Dymond. The tall granite obelisk still stands today at the site of her murder and reads, "This monument is erected by public subscription in memory of Charlotte Dymond, who was murdered here by Matthew Weeks on Sunday, April 14th, 1844. So do you believe that Matthew Weeks was the murderer of Charlotte Dymond? Or was it the most clever Thomas Prout who got away with the most perfect murder? It is said that if you visit Bodmin Jail, you can see and hear the ghost of Matthew Weeks screaming out for justice. Others have also commented that if you drive or walk near Charlotte's memorial, you can hear her desperate screams for help. Only you can decide. Let us know in the comments who you think the murderer of Charlotte Dymond was. I hope you've enjoyed this story time. Please make sure to join us next time here in the vault for another mysterious, haunting, or unexplained story time. Good night.